South Park has come a long way since its days of construction paper and Elmer's glue, and over the years we've been able to see its growth from the profane to the profound. This is Matt Stone and Trey Parker, the creators of South Park, as well as the two animated short films that preceded it, both titled The Spirit of Christmas. The first, in 1992, featured 4 boys witnessing a fight between Frosty the Snowman and an infant Jesus, and the second, in 95, featured a fully grown Jesus, this time battling Santa Claus, a video that became one of the earliest pre-YouTube viral hits after being passed around Hollywood by former Fox executive Brian Graden, who had originally commissioned the video as a Christmas card. And with the success of The Spirit of Christmas, they were able to secure a 6-episode series deal with Comedy Central, a dying network mostly known for showing reruns of The Benny Hill Show and Absolutely Fabulous. South Park was a foundational part in making it the basic cable giant it is today, debuting on August 13th, 1997, with the episode Cartman Gets an Anal Probe, the only episode to be made with the stop-motion cutout techniques of those first 2 short films. The rest of the series was done in Maya using 3D animation, with the original construction paper textures scanned in and plastered on the models. It gave the series its signature style, setting it apart from its contemporaries like The Simpsons or Family Guy. It made its perceived cheapness a virtue. And they didn't just create a show, they reworked the entire animation process, putting a system into place that would allow them to produce content hours after it was written, with an average turnaround time of just 6 days, keeping the content fresh and topical, a time capsule of the current week. And while most satire pretty heavily focuses on just one side of an issue, South Park tends to criticize every angle. Matt and Trey see the world for what it is and present it as such. They don't take sides and they have no agenda but honesty and humor. They don't just target conservatives, they go after liberals and liberal positions, left, right, and everything in between.
What we've always said, and I think what we say with the show, is not anything new, but I think it is something that is great to put out there, which is, you know, the people screaming on this side and the people screaming on that side are the same people. And it's okay to be someone in the middle laughing at both of them. You know?
South Park sets out to dismantle any symbol of self-importance. It isn't escapism. It rubs our noses in the ugliness of our world, while simplifying current events into a less complicated, more easily understood format. And viewed through the lens of these 4 kids made it more relatable to younger audiences. But South Park debuted just as the newly formed TV parental guidelines went into effect, the series being the first to earn the TVMA rating by the FCC. And people typically like to point fingers at the FCC when the topic of censorship comes up, particularly with South Park. But the FCC's authorizing legislation doesn't allow it to regulate subscription-based content. That includes cable, satellite, and pay-per-view services. Those are all self-regulated under their own standards and practices department, which is why the rules are so vague and varied between networks. Standards and practices only censor when pressured by advertisers. You're less likely to secure an ad spot from McDonald's when your content is laden with profanity, which is also the basis for the demonetization ruling here on YouTube. Advertisers typically operate under the assumption that family-friendly content is their biggest revenue source. But that's not always the case. In fact, ad space on South Park has always been some of the network's most valuable. In the spring of '97, Comedy Central's highest-selling ad spot went for just $7,500. And after only a few months of South Park being on the air, those primetime slots skyrocketed to $30,000 or more. Although in the 90s and early 2000s, a lot of the material was only suggestive. Matt and Trey were masters of planting a joke in your head.
Okay, and now for your enjoyment, here's my famous ping pong ball trick.
And then subverting it with a non-joke.
There, I didn't miss one.
But these days, the vulgarity is a bit more blunt.
You go look at season 2 or season 1 and it's so tame. It's like Yo Gabba Gabba by comparison to what we do now.
And even though the material was significantly tamer in those early seasons, they still pushed the boundaries of what was acceptable on television quite a bit. Take a look at the word pussy.
Now, I know that some of you think this is very funny, words like penis and vagina. We're going to get through this by being mature and grown up, okay?
People often credit Amy Schumer for getting the word pussy uncensored on Comedy Central, but South Park was airing pussy uncensored all the way back in 1998 with the episode Gnomes.
Yeah, he called me a pussy. I'm not a pussy. You're a pussy. You're a pussy, pussy.
Or in 2001 with Here Comes the Neighborhood. And now we hear 50-year-old ladies say it on CNN because it's topical.
Today we saw him boasting, laughing about grabbing a woman's pussy.
Our cultural sensitivities to language have evolved. There have been a lot of swear word related innovations over the years, and South Park has really blazed the trail for social acceptability in obscene content, like with the episode It Hits the Fan, which serves as a great lesson on the diminishing returns of empty profanity by having the character speak or write the word shit nearly 200 times, stripping it of its potency. In the episode, you can really see the fluctuation in the severity of swearing over time, starting with Kyle saying,
God damn it, Cartman, what are they gonna say cop drama.
Goddamn being one of television's biggest taboos just a few decades ago.
Tonight, on cop drama, on TV, they're gonna say shit.
Shit being the centerpiece of the episode, as well as a word unable to be broadcast uncensored before 1999, just 2 years before this episode aired. And it's closed out with a censored...
Holy fucking shit!
It's interesting to see where we are now in terms of language tolerance and how far we still have to go. South Park's not only the most aware, but also one of the most important shows on television. It's really matured its audience through its own immaturity, helping to sensitize the mainstream to vulgarity. A common criticism of South Park lately is that it's lost its edge. Yet, 2 weeks ago, we saw a classroom of 10-year-old boys pull out their dicks in protest on basic cable, and it wasn't a big deal. South Park hasn't softened, we as a society have just grown up. In 1952, Lucille Ball was prohibited from using the word pregnant on television because it was considered indecent. And now look where we are. Our standards for what's offensive has radically changed, and maybe sometime in the future we'll do away with it altogether. As you can see here, the number of FCC complaints over the past decade and a half has decreased quite a bit. That brief uptick in 2004 was the Janet Jackson nipple incident broadcast during the Super Bowl. And with South Park, there's definitely more leniency on visual obscenities than verbal ones. For example, in the episode, Where Is My Country Gone?, where the Canadian Donald Trump equivalent is shown being fucked to death by Mr. Garrison, but when the act is referred to by the Canadians...
Hey, did you hear the news, buddy? The Canadian president's been f***ed to death.
It's bleeped. And that has a lot to do with the crudeness of the animation and the uncanny valley. South Park's really just one step removed from stick figures, so they're able to get away with a lot more. Depictions of sexual acts involving construction paper is pretty far removed from the actual thing, but the word fuck is the same across the board. But these words are only bad because we let them be. Censorship is really just preserving the negativity of language. The word pregnancy being deemed too vulgar to air in retrospect seems goofy and backwards as hell, but it didn't at the time. And think about how we'll look back at the word cunt or dick. Censorship does not protect children. As a former child myself, I can tell you that awareness overpowers ignorance. Know about something without knowing what it is, and you'll be more compelled to investigate. Censorship won't keep a child from swearing, it'll only make them more curious, which is the entire foundation of the show, a perfect metaphor for what happens to children when their language is restricted. Claiming that words by themselves somehow corrupt or degrade the people that use them is not only ridiculous, but it's also what gives shows like South Park a platform to be offensive by pushing those artificial boundaries. With no boundaries, there's no one to offend. But that would probably make life a lot more boring and a lot less funny. So I guess if that means dealing with censored fucks on television for the next decade or so, it's probably worth it to see just how far South Park can push the envelope within those limits.
So please, everyone, from now on, you've got to try and watch your language.
Go fuck yourself.